Welcome to the Tabletop Gaming Guild podcast, a podcast all about the experiences and memories that playing games with friends and families can create. On this episode, we discuss our holiday recommendations, so get out your list and check them twice.
What we're going to do in this podcast is we're going to go over a couple different categories, just generic categories that we made up to help you out with your buying guides for friends and families. I think the one we should start off with is best games for kids. I'll go ahead and start off. My pick for kids, now I have a kid that's 4 years old, so in your 4 to 6 age range, my pick is My First Castle Panic. So in My First Castle Panic, you're going to defend your castle against hordes of monsters. So it's similar to Castle Panic, except for instead of having the multiple lanes where you have like a sonar started grid for Castle Panic, you have one channel that the monster comes down. And the way it's going to work is as the monsters go down closer and closer to your castle, you're going to play cards that are a color and a shape. So each of these squares has like blue triangle, red circle, and you're going to be playing these cards that match the color and the shape to take out the monsters. And there's some cool monsters in there. There's ones that recruit more monsters, so you place more out. There's a runner that goes to the end of the line. But the end-all thing is this is a great game to start kids out with because it's cooperative. So you're not competitive. You're all working together for the same goal. So that is my pick for best game for kids.
Well, I don't have kids, so I have not played a whole lot of kids' games. There was one I was looking at, which I played, and it was really good for, kids 4 or 5, but I looked it up, and it's no longer available. I just got it like a month or two ago, and now it's not available. But that's Lupin Louie, so I just wanted to mention that, but that's not my pick because it's not available. My actual pick is Colt Express. Now, this is definitely for older kids. BGG, and actually the publisher says 10 plus, but I guess the community generally agrees as, an 8-year-old can generally handle this. So 8 plus is the community agreed upon age. Now, Colt Express is program movement, so there's actually a fair amount, young kids can learn from just kind of the idea of planning ahead and, not knowing what other people are going to do and trying to plan based on imperfect knowledge. Because what's going to happen in this game is you're going to take turns playing cards face down. Go round and round, constantly playing cards face down. Once you've played all your cards, they'll flip that entire pile over and start going through what everybody did, which can be either, move up, down, left or right, shoot somebody next to you, pick up some loot, but, you can push somebody as well. So your actions are going to end up getting changed by things that other people have done. There's not much you can do about it other than just watch what ended up happening and hope you get what you wanted. But it's not too punishing in that even if you don't get exactly what you wanted, you're getting something. That's Colt Express.
So yeah, my best kids game is one that's been around for a little while, but it's one that as a children's librarian I fell in love with and made sure that when my library started offering board games that we had it as part of the collection is My First Orchard by Haba. And it's just a really good, again, another cooperative game, which I highly recommend for young kids. It's great to have them working together and not having to try to beat each other. But again, My First Orchard is like ages 2 plus is what they say on the box. And the idea is that there are 4 trees with different colored fruits, and there is a die that the kids roll, and if they roll that color, then they get to collect that color fruit, put it in the basket, and they're trying to collect all of the fruit. The thing that's fighting against them in the game is that there's a pesky raven, so on the die, if they would roll the raven, there's a little path that the raven token moves closer to the orchard, and if the raven gets all the way to the orchard before they have collected all of the fruit, the raven wins and the kids lose. But it plays for kids 1 to 4 players, and it's a lot of fun, especially for that age group, because again, you're teaching them the colors, you're teaching them to be cooperative. The pieces are probably one of the big selling points for me, because the raven and the fruit are all made out of really solid wood pieces, and so it's something that your kids, even if they're not playing that game, if you're not somebody who is super stingy with your game pieces, they could play with them outside of the game. For kids who like to play shopping or store or whatever, the pieces of fruit are really durable and hold up really, really well. It's just a really nice set. The basket's nice. It's an easy game to teach the kids. Again, there's a lot of luck involved, obviously, but you're not teaching strategy. You're just teaching them to be cooperative, fine motor skills with rolling the dice and picking up the fruit. They're learning colors and differences. That's one that I think stands the test of time, as I've played it a few times with some kids and watched kids play it and watched people at the library borrow it. It is one that has been well loved, and we probably need to update ours, not because the pieces have started to fall apart, but the box has definitely seen better days. I like My First Orchard by Haba.
Yep, I just told my wife that it's there, so we're going to borrow it.
Oh, okay, fantastic.
This kind of reminded me of an old game from when I was a kid. It's called Hi-Ho Cherry-O. Is it anything similar to that?
No.
Okay, good.
No, I remember Hi-Ho Cherry-O. It's definitely not that one.
All right, Dan, what you got?
I am actually also going to mention a game from Haba. The game I'm going to pick is Animal Upon Animal, which is basically just like a stacking game, but it uses like cute wooden animal pieces for the stacking. There's a smaller box version of this game that has, a few less pieces, and the pieces are smaller, but the gameplay is still functional. It works on that whole manual dexterity thing.
And Animal Upon Animal is actually one that I think I might pick up for my 2-year-old.
I was going to say, I'm looking at it right now, and again, it's got those nice wooden pieces, and that looks really cool. I think
that would complement My First Orchard a lot.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's go ahead on. We'll do the opposite range right now. So we'll do best game for adults. So my pick is Terraforming Mars, which by Stronghold Games, which we've talked about that game a lot on this podcast, but just briefly, it is a tile placement, card drafting, engine building game. It's really easy to teach, but there's a lot of depth to it, and there's a lot of strategies that you can employ in it. And what's cool about the game is where a lot of engine builders will end when you finally build your engine and right before you get to do cool stuff. In Terraforming Mars, it's a pretty long game, so you get to do the cool interactions, and you get to have that fun in the game. So that's my pick for best game for adults. What you got, Nathan?
Well, I also thought about doing Terraforming Mars, but I decided to avoid doing anything from my top 10. Because people can refer to that as well if they want other ideas of what they buy, so why repeat? But I did choose Concordia. Now, Concordia is a really excellent Euro game, so I could have put this in the Euro category too, but I chose it for this one. You're colonizing the Mediterranean, you are gathering resources, you are trading them in for money, for political cards, and it's really just a resource management game that's really solid, really streamlined. I don't really have a whole lot to say about it. It's just there's nothing that they did wrong. This is just like a perfectly done Euro game.
Yeah, it's definitely a good game. It's one of my favorite games. So what do you got, Peter?
So my best game for adults, I decided to go with, again, one of my personal favorites. I know I've mentioned it previously on other episodes, but it's Betrayal Legacy, because it takes a game that I already loved and turned it into a legacy game. It turned it into a campaign game. There's like 14 different scenarios throughout the game life. And so when you look at it, you see the sticker, you get a little bit of a sticker shock on it. But when you think about you're getting 14 playthroughs, it's like a $70, $75 game. But the idea is, again, with Betrayal, you're going to be exploring a haunted mansion. But with Betrayal Legacy, you're not just exploring the haunted mansion, you're exploring the history of this haunted mansion. You are creating the history of this place, and you start off with a character, and then the next session you're going to be playing one of their progeny as they go through the ages, and it like loosely ties back to the previous characters. That's more kind of a role play thing where you write it out and you say that they do, but it's a lot of fun. You get a good group of friends together, and I think you're really going to enjoy this game a lot. Rob Davio and the team that was behind this did a fantastic job writing a really well thought out campaign. And if you're already a fan of Betrayal, getting to build and play out the history of the mansion from that game, it just makes it even better. But if you've never played Betrayal, I think you'll still fall in love with it as well. So if you like a little bit of a horror mystery game, I think this is one that you would definitely enjoy. As well as, again, once you're done playing the campaign, you can continue to play the game after that, because it has like 50 different storylines throughout, only some of which you'll play in the 13 to 14 story campaign. There's a whole bunch more that you wouldn't have played yet. So I think it's one that definitely is worth the price and a lot of fun.
All right, Dan, what you got?
Well, I'm surprised I am going last and I am the one to mention this game, I'm going to mention Wingspan. Wingspan is, of course, a very popular game, but it's got great art with these cute little birds. The gameplay is not so difficult to get into, certainly, if you've been exposed to one or two other games. It's got this really smooth engine building card-based mechanic that comes together really nicely, and the game has a certain amount of board gaming appeal. It's gotten board gamers into birding and birders into board games.
Yeah, it's definitely a good pick. Now we're going off to best intro game. And my recommendation for best intro game, so this can be people that are new to the hobby or haven't actually played any modern board games, and mine is going to be Kingdomino. Kingdomino is a very light, simple domino laying game where each of the dominoes have like a territory on them, where it's going to be like oceans, wheat fields, forests and stuff, and you're trying to match them up, and some of them have little crowns on it, and the more connecting areas you have, you multiply by the crowns. So you just basically build a 5x5 grid. Person with the best score at the end of the game wins. So it's light, simple, easy to teach. Kingdomino is my pick for best intro game. So what's yours, Nathan?
So mine is in Peter's wheelhouse. I don't know if you played this one yet, but Ex Libris.
I have not played this one, but I know of it.
So Ex Libris, you are a librarian. You're building up your shelves, getting new books, but you have to start with one bookshelf and then make sure that all your bookshelves that you get from then on are in alphabetical order. So at the end of the game, if you end up with something that's out of order, it does not count to your final score. There's also a factor of you have a personal favorite type of book. There's also usually a banned book type that you get negative points for, as well as community favorite book type. I think that was the term they used, or something along that lines. Everybody gets extra points for one book type, negative points for another. Then you get extra points for your own book type, and you have to make sure all your books are in the right order, which can actually be challenging because when you draw a card that's E and you have an F down, you might think they should go next to each other, but you might have, that might be an EF. You might get an EA later, so that you have nowhere you can place that EA book. So that's Ex Libris.
Yeah, that definitely sounds like something I need to check out at some point.
Literally check out.
Yep, I need to check that out for sure. Absolutely. My best intro level game that I went with is probably one of the games that I played first, really getting myself into the hobby, and that was Carcassonne, which I think is kind of like Kingdomino with the tile laying, tile placement game. But I enjoy Carcassonne immensely. It's one that I can easily sit down with a friend and play. There's so many different versions available online or the actual board game. And then again, the idea is that you're building this kind of like French countryside, and you're laying down tiles that have fields and roads and castles and cities and things, and you're placing your little meeples on those different places to earn your points throughout the game. It's got the little bit of extra to it so that you're building for points during the game, but then you're also laying down some pieces that you won't get back until the absolute end of the game to get some even more points, hopefully. So Carcassonne is fairly easy to learn and play, but it's got a lot of replayability, I think, and there's a ton of expansions for it. And honestly, I've only played a few of the expansions, and I think it's a very good entry into the gaming hobby.
I am going to mention probably a timeless classic. I'm going to have my pick be Pandemic, the original Pandemic. Pandemic is a co-op game. Oddly enough, in this game, you take on the role of a CDC specialist and work together to stem the tide of multiple epidemic diseases across the globe. So very appropriate for our current situation. You can, deal more epidemic cards into the player deck to ramp up the difficulty once you've learned the game to a certain level. There's different roles that exist in the game that will change exactly how your play turns out. And of course, the deck of location cards will determine, where the hot spots are in the world.
Yeah, and the nice thing about Pandemic is you got an easy next step game, which is Pandemic Legacies. Once you've played a Pandemic enough, go on to that.
Yeah, and if you don't like the theme of Pandemic because of the current situation. There's a couple other options on the table for you as well. You can go for the Cthulhu version, or you can go for the one that's based on the fall of Rome.
There's a lot of pandemics. The next one we're going to go to is Best Game for Families. And my pick for that is Takenoko, because pandas.
Always pandas.
Pandas.
Put a panda in the game, we're good to go.
The panda is cute, yeah.
It is. I know my daughter likes stealing the panda and just running away with it. But the cool thing about this game is not only is it super easy to teach and simple, but it actually gets a lot of concepts for like harder games. In this game, you do set collection. You're going to try building different territories when you flip those tiles. You're going to be doing that. You're also going to be growing bamboo when you move the farmer. And you're also going to try to collect bamboo with the panda when you move the panda. And you get 2 different actions during your turn, and you can do a variety of different strategies. But the idea of the game is you're actually just trying to get one of these 3 different goal cards completed. So you have your panda gold cards, you have your territory gold cards, and you have your farmer gold cards, which are the bamboo growing. And they have really cool wooden bamboo pieces in it that are cool that interlock, and you can go up to 4 bamboo high. There's a lot of really cool things with this game, and it's really well made, and it's just a lot of fun. It's super easy to teach. So that was my pick for Best Family Game.
Yeah, I want to say that Takenoko's got a surprising number of mechanics in it for such a simple and easy game.
Yeah. Nathan's face, I think I stole his game. Okay,
No. Although that is a really good choice. You can even get the giant version if you want to put a lot of money into it. My choice is it's sort of a push your luck, take that game, but it works really well for families because it's fairly lighthearted in the way it handles it. It's Survive Escape from Atlantis. Now, in Survive Escape from Atlantis, you are trying to evacuate an island, which they call Atlantis. It's just an island, really. But one of the nice things is it's got a tactile nature that makes it easy to remember things. Like, the deserts disappear first, and they're thinner tiles, so that helps you remember. You got then the forest, so the slightly thicker forests go next, and then the mountains go last, and they're much thicker tiles. It also gives a slight 3-dimensionality of the board that's really visually appealing. But at the beginning of the game, you're going to be putting out your meeples, and that's the only time you can look at the values underneath the meeples. So each meeple has a value that determines how many points you get if that meeple escapes. But you have to remember that, and as they move around, it's very easy to lose track of where your high value meeples are, and you might sacrifice it thinking it's a low value one. In the meantime, you're trying to either get on boats and get an escape, or swim and hope you don't get eaten by sharks, or your boat is not sunk by whales. And so basically, you're escaping. Everybody's kind of rolling a dice and maybe taking out your meeples and, trying not to help you while they escape.
I really like that game a lot. Pretty cool.
For my family game, I went ahead and went with another game that I know we've spoken about before, but over the last year or so, having played it multiple times, it's one that I would definitely bring out friends or family, and that would be the Quacks of Quedlinburg. So it's a push your luck game. There's maybe a little bit of strategy involved when you're going through and purchasing your new ingredients to add to your bag, but in the game you are playing a quack doctor who is brewing potions and selling them to the masses. But when you're brewing your potion, you're just trying to do your best not to put in too many of the wrong ingredients, because that will cause your mixture to explode and you will not win as many points. And so throughout the game you get chances to spend points and add new ingredients to your bag, making it more likely that you will be able to add more and more and more ingredients in upcoming rounds. And again, the player with the most points at the end of the game wins. It's a lot of fun. I find it enjoyable if you're playing it where everybody is drawing from the bag and laying out at the exact same time. You can kind of see as everybody's pulling out if they're getting the cherry bombs and maybe exploding their brew, because it's pretty funny when people all of a sudden get really upset that they have exploded their potion and did not do as well as they were hoping to do. For those of you out there, though, that you're not a huge fan of just like the push your luck or the kind of the luck games in general, there is some strategy, but like I said, you could just have really bad luck and continually just be pulling out the cherry bombs the whole time, and you're just never going to win a round. It happens. It's happened to me. But I like the theme of the game. I like the way it plays, and if you're just there to have fun, I think it's a good game. I have not played with any of the expansions yet. I think there's at least 1 or 2 at this point, and I would like to do that at some point. So this is a game that I am hoping to get to play more often, and I think you should as well.
Well, they have a nice catch-up mechanism that kind of counters a little bit of that. If you're really unlucky, you still get, the benefits of the rat tails, which let you go a little bit further ahead starting at the next round.
Yep, absolutely.
So, For my family game, I am going to pick 2 games. Can I do that, James? Can I pick 2 games? All right, because they're effectively very similar games. I'm going to mention Forbidden Desert or its sister game, Forbidden Island. Both of these games are cooperative games. They're made by the same designer. There's slight differences in them. So in Forbidden Island, you're trying to find these artifact tiles that are, hidden on this island. You have to accumulate these cards and trade in the cards to take the artifact tiles. And as you're doing this, of course, the island is sinking into the ocean, and you can perform certain actions to try to stem the bleeding of that somewhat. But your goal is to get all 4 of these artifacts and get off the island before it sinks. And then Forbidden Desert is very similar, except this time you're in the middle of the desert. You have to find the pieces to your airship so that you can escape. And then there's this sandstorm that dumps sand tiles onto the map. Those cause you difficulties because you have to maybe dig up the sand tiles to get access to the artifact pieces that are out there and whatnot. But as co-op games, I think they're both very playable and certainly appropriate for a group of people looking to do something together.
Yeah, I was going to call Dan the first cheater, but this actually is fine. They're good. They're close enough together. So,
absolutely. I was going to say, it's a good family one. I bought this one for my nephew and my sister to play, so it's a good one.
Yep.
James, in terms of cheating, I don't think you have a right. You can't throw stones in the glass house.
All right, so next we'll go on to best strategy game. And for this one, I went pure abstract strategy. So my pick is Onitama. So in Onitama is like a reduced chess game, but your movements are determined by 5 cards total. And at any one time, you only have 2 of the cards in your hand. The cards are placed face down so everyone can see them. You have 4 pawns and 1 king, and you're trying to either get your king, the other side to sit in the opponent's seat, or kill their king. So what you're going to do is you're going to pick one of the movement cards that you have. And once you do, you're going to do that movement. And then you're going to place that card for the opponent to get after their next turn. And then you're going to pick up the card that they played the previous turn and give it to yourself. So you're basically cycling through these cards. And you have to pay attention to what moves your opponent's going to have, what moves they're going to be able to do next turn, what moves you're going to be able to do next turn. So there's a lot of strategy in it, but it's nice because it's streamlined down into 5 player pieces. And it can be relatively quick, and it's super easy to teach. So that's my pick, Onitama.
Yeah, my choice for best strategy is a slightly older game, but it's gotten several reprints because it is an excellent game. Now that's Aquire. Aquire is an economic strategy game where you are kind of bingo style drawing tiles and getting to place them on a shared board. But as you build up these tiles and connect them into corporations, once you've formed a corporation by linking a certain number of tiles by chance, so you can choose one of the corporations to found, and you get free stock for doing that, and then everybody can go at the end of the turn and buy stock in that company. And even though there's kind of luck in the draw of the tiles, there's a lot of strategy in which stocks you buy and then these corporations, when they combine, there's a merger in which all the stocks of the smaller corporation are sold off, and then you can trade them for stocks in the other corporation, or just trade them for money, or just take the loss, don't take anything, and just keep the stocks, hoping you found that corporation again. So it's a really fun, very solid economic strategy game. That's Aquire.
So my strategy game is one that was already mentioned a little bit, so I don't want to dive too much into it. It was mentioned in one of the other categories, but that's Concordia. I have enjoyed playing Concordia a couple times now, and there's a bit of strategy in it. Economic development game in Roman times, 2 to 5 players, and instead of any dice or luck of dice or cards, you are relying on strategic abilities. You're going to be watching the other players and trying to figure out what their goals are, what it is they're trying to do to earn themselves points, and then you got to try to either outpace them or get around them somehow with your own strategy. Everybody starts with the same set of cards, and then throughout the game there's the opportunity to acquire more cards, which are going to be getting you victory points at the end of the game, but also giving you more actions for each round as you play. And some of those actions are to duplicate actions that other players have already played. And so again, it's important to watch what the other players are doing and what their strategies are, and then build your strategy to hopefully counteract theirs and outmaneuver them. So that is Concordia.
That's our first crossover, which is amazing.
I know. I'm very, very impressed that we haven't had more than that so far. So,
full disclosure, I had like 2 games picked for each category just in case I needed a backup. So,
don't let them behind the veil.
So we do have a cheater. We just didn't know it.
All right. So for the strategy category, I'm not going to mention the game that's already been mentioned, and I will mention the game that hasn't been mentioned. My pick for game is the game Orleans. Is a bag building game where you start with a certain number of worker tokens in a bag, and each turn you're going to pull a certain number of these tokens out of the bag, and then you get to assign these workers to basically a planning board in front of you to perform various actions in the game. The game is basically you're growing a mercantile empire in France, so you're putting like trade houses on the map, and collecting good tokens are the primary ways to score victory points in the game. But there's actually several different ways to go about doing these things, and you've got technology tiles that you can deploy to make certain actions easier and quicker to pull off, and you've got special development tiles that give you as a player unique actions that only you can do. And there's actually a lot going on in this game that I still don't understand. So I'm going to recommend it. Yeah,
that's definitely a solid game. I really want to play that one a lot. I like everything about it. And yeah. So next up is Best Party Game. And for me, the person who hates party games, I do love this one, which is Wits and Wagers. Now, Wits and Wagers has a couple different versions. I like them all. I like the one where you bet chips like Las Vegas style, but the most common one I play is the one where you have the 1 point and 2 point chip. What you do at Wits and Wagers is you get a ridiculous question that has to do with a numeric value. So they'll say like, what is the world's record for the most hot dogs eaten? And you're supposed to be like, okay, well, I think it's 47. They're going to write that number down on a dry erase sheet, and then you're going to place it face down. Once everyone's done that, you're going to flip them up and you put them in numeric order, and you're going to take your 2 different chips and you're going to place them on one of these tiles. Now, it doesn't have to be you, which is the cool part of the game. You could have no idea what's happening, but if you think you know someone who's close, you can put it on there, and the person that is closest will get a point for being right, and then all the little chips on there will score. So you can actually win this game by being wrong the entire time with the values you put in. It's unbelievably easy to teach. It's really fun to moderate and read these cards off to people and see what they can come up with numbers and stuff. It's just super easy. It works for every age group. It's great for just functions with families. It's great with functions just about anywhere. So that's mine, Wits and Wagers.
I approve.
Haven't played it, but again, this is another category.
You're dead to me.
There's another category I haven't played a lot of party games. Generally, I'm not a big fan of party games, but one that I do like that is Rhino Hero, which also could be in my kids category. So in Rhino Hero, you have a deck of floor tiles that you'll be drawing, and they'll tell you how many supports you can have on that floor tile, and you're trying to build this into a collective tower. So it's kind of sort of, if you really want to make it a simple analogy, Jenga, reverse Jenga, sort of, but better. But as you're going, you have to move up the Rhino and kind of trying to make sure you don't knock over the tower. There's also little monkeys you might have to hang on to the cards. So it's just basically a simple dexterity game that is actually surprisingly a lot of fun.
Yeah, I remember when we played the game, just you and I, and then my wife was making fun of us for 2 grown adults playing this game. But it is just so much fun. It's just unbelievably fun. Like, you play the game and you're like, I'm going to play it again and again and again and again.
Yep.
So my party game, and I don't, what is it with you guys and not liking party games? You just don't like parties? You don't like people? I don't know what it is. Guilty. All of them, yes. I really enjoy a good party game. I've got a certain group of friends who like to get together every once in a while. They're a big family, and it's just hilarious watching them all yell over top of each other. So I introduced them to one party game a few years back, and it was a hit, and they've been playing it forever. But I'm not going to mention that one tonight. I'm going to tell you about the other one that I want to introduce them to next when I get the next chance, and that is Just One. So I like a good word game, and so in this one, there's one person who's going to be the it person, and they're going to tell a number, and that's going to correspond to a card, and there's 5 words on that card. Everybody else in the group, except for that one person, knows what that word is, and their job is to come up with a single word that can get them to guess what the word on the card is. The only problem is the rest of the group, they have to come up with their word on their own. So everybody in the group, however big your group is, 10, 15 people, everyone's coming up with a single word to try to get that person to guess the main word. And any words that are used by multiple people, all of a sudden, you can't use that word anymore. So it goes away. So you have to try to guess what your friends are going to use, which sometimes all of a sudden nobody uses it because you thought somebody else was going to use the word and then nobody did, and that's frustrating. And then you're like, oh, nobody would ever use this word. No one is going to use mitochondria. And then 3 people do, and it's frustrating as all get out. So it's a fun game. Your goal, again, it's cooperative. So at the end in the game, it kind of tells you, okay, how many words did you get right? And then it tells you like how awesome your group is. And it's really sad as you slowly watch your score dwindle lower because everybody comes up with the same clues, and sometimes you end up with just one word. Here it is. You just get the one word, and you got to guess what the other word is that it corresponds to. But it gives you a really cool feeling when you do guess the right one. So if you like word games, and if you like getting mad at people because they chose your word even though no, it was yours, they shouldn't have chosen it, Just One. It's a good one. I like it.
I love Just One. I played it a lot at work. It is an awesome game. I love when no one has a matching word, but one guy puts his word on there that makes no sense.
Uh-huh.
And you're sitting there, to anyone but that person, and you're sitting there like, how is this guy going to guess this? We have 3 things that make sense, and this thing that's baseball, what does that have to do with anything?
Yep, it's gonna throw everything off. What were you thinking?
Yeah, what were you thinking? And then it's hilarious getting their answer from that. I'm like, well, in 1990, no one knows it.
But yeah, Just One, again, such a basic idea, but I think sometimes that can be some of the most fun that you get. It's really good when it's a basic idea for a party game. You don't want to have to explain too many rules, and that one is very easy to explain and a lot of fun to play.
All right, my pick for this category is a game called Wavelength. Wavelength is a game where basically 2 players at a time reveal a card. The card simply has a word on it, and they both think about it for a while, and then there's a countdown for each one. And they both have to say a word that's not one of the revealed words, somewhere in between them. So just as an example of 2 words were like pirate, box. One guy might go with treasure, and the other guy might go with chest. Right? If they say the exact same word, they get like a big score token, like 5 points. But if they don't say the same word, they've got to go again. Only this time, the 2 words just said that weren't the same are also eliminated. So they've got to try to arrive on the same word. And then they go 3 times with each successive try being slightly worth less points. So if the word is guessed, both players get the point token. And then it just sort of goes around so that you're paired off with each player like next to you in order.
Yeah.
I forget how long the game really lasts, but it's a really cool like mind word game. Yeah.
Yeah, it's another one that I wanted to give a shot. And with my history of party games, I'll probably hate it, but well, it's worth a shot because it's me. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and move on to best Euro game, and the game that I picked is going to be 13 years old.
Actually, before we go to that,
yeah.
I want to clarify on Dan's. It sounded like he's describing the older version of Wavelength.
Let me take a look at what you're looking at. Wavelength.
So there's a 2004 version, and then there's a 2019 version. 2004 is the one where you both write down a word.
I'm pretty sure it was the 2019 version.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It has the 2019 version has that little dial thing, and you try to like get closer to each other and stuff. So yeah, I think that was what you were playing. Yeah. Okay. So we're gonna go ahead and move on to the best Euro game, and my Euro game is currently sitting at 13 years ago. It is ranked 29 on BGG. It's been up there. I pretty much consider it the best Euro game, and that is Agricola. And
you're wrong.
So in Agricola, what you're going to do is you are basically going to try to survive as a farmer. So you're going to go through this extremely tight game, even in the family mode, which the family mode is the way that I suggest people play it for at least the first dozen games. And then after you have mastered the family mode, so what you're looking for in Agricola is you're going to be able to mitigate point loss and trying to raise enough sheep, you're trying to raise enough cattle, you're trying to raise enough boars, you're trying to get enough grain, you're trying to get enough vegetable, you're trying to have a lot of people on there, and you're trying to have no empty space on your board. And this was the first of a trilogy of games that Uwe Rosenberg did that works with these mechanisms. And this is the one that was the most punishing out of them. So that would have been Agricola, Caverna, and A Feast for Odin. So this one here, if you don't feed your people, it can be devastating in the game. There is a lot to do with managing your ability to produce enough food each round, which they keep getting shorter and shorter through the game. So you get more and more stressed at trying to make sure that you don't get those beggar cards and lose points. So my argument is that it's lasted so long, it's still in reprint. They have tons of expansions for this. They've done tons of iterations of it. There is, even in the base game, there's 3 different card stacks you can go through that give different gameplay beyond the family version. So there's a ton in this box to play. I'll be interested to see how Dan combats my entry when it gets to him. But he's last.
I have 2 games that can be used almost interchangeably, which is Yellow and Yancey and Tigris and Euphrates. I chose Tigris and Euphrates, but really the differences between them are fairly minor. Yellow and Yancey is a newer version, and then some ways it nicened it up. It's not as take that. And it's still very stressful at times, though. Tigris and Euphrates, I think I fall off on this, but I believe it's my preferred of the 2 because it's just so intense at times. Now, Tigris and Euphrates is a Euro strategy game. So you are putting down colored tiles, claim areas, and you have to put your leaders in that areas to even be able to score that point. But if you put a leader in somebody else's area of the same color, you have an internal conflict. You have to compare secretly pull tiles and cut tiles of a certain colors to have that conflict, and the winner gets tons of points. If you connect to separate kingdoms, you can have fights from multiple leaders, from multiple players. And again, you reveal tiles of red color to determine who wins, and you can again get lots of points. Now, the key to this game, though, is typical of Rhino Knizia. Your points are based on your lowest scoring color. So even if you have lots of red tiles and lots of red points that you've generated throughout the game, you might have nothing in blue. So towards the end of the game, you're just desperately trying to cause a battle to get a lot of blue points. And you can it really gears up in the end of the game. You're getting stressed. You know somebody else is aiming for a certain color, so you have to kind of balance whether you want to really push to get the color you want, or you want to keep them from getting their color. So it's a really, really good Euro strategy game.
Yellow Yancey's better.
6-1.
Yeah, I see that. I just like Yellow Yancey because of the extra player power thing you do in it. But yeah, I could see either of them being awesome.
So my best Euro game is Terraforming Mars. And I know we've talked about it a bunch in the past on this show, as well as it's already been mentioned, I think, once this evening on this show. But I think it's one that definitely deserves to be talked about a lot because it is a fantastic game. And again, those of you who heard us talk about it, you are playing as some mega corporations who are working together to terraform the planet of Mars so that humans can have a new habitable home. But there's purchasing throughout the game that takes place of cards and tasks that you're trying to accomplish, and you're getting the different types of resources which are going to help you accomplish those tasks. And again, it's an interesting game, it's a fun game, and I would recommend getting it if you can.
It is certainly amazing. All right, James, Euro games, Concordia, mic drop.
It's good. It's good. Not as
What
good
are you?
It's better. It's
what
better.
Are you talking about? It's good. It's better. Yeah, see, Nathan's backing me up.
I can't say it's better. I've only played Concordia. I've never played Agricola.
When you play Agricola, we have to play it at least a dozen times.
It takes a dozen times to say it's better than Concordia?
Agricola is a game, yes. So Concordia you can play once or twice, and you get the game, and it's fine.
Concordia is a better game. Mike drop. There we go. All right.
Agricola is a long-term.
All right. Yeah. My pick for this category is Concordia because it is a well-designed game. You're definitely pushing around resources and trying to use those resources to, build your merchant empire in the Roman world, and you're buying cards to try to align with how you've built out your little empire, and all the little bits of the game definitely intersect with each other, and it's amazing.
Yeah, Concordia is good. I can see your argument. Not that I'm saying you won. All right, best thematic game. So best thematic game for me, played this a lot, and we've talked about it several times, and the last podcast was about it too. And that is, Dead of Winter. Dead of Winter is an amazing thematic game. The players make the game, the cards and the situations you can put into and protecting your colony from the zombies coming in, all the stuff that you have to do, the thematic objectives that each player gets, and the possibility of a traitor. It's just an amazing game. You really feel like you're in that sort of situation. And it's really cool on how thematic the game is, where it makes people actually want to be the good guy when they're the good guy. And when people are the bad guy, they want to try to be super sneaky. So it's really cool on how it's one of the only cooperative games, real quick, that I've played where a player that's not the traitor will lose the game just to have other people win. I have never played a cooperative game where people will sacrifice themselves from winning just to have the good guys win. So...
But just so you know, it's not going to be James. He is not going to sacrifice himself. I speak from experience.
That's probably true. All right, so that's best thematic game.
Well, yeah, again, that was one I could have mentioned, or I could have mentioned Mansion of Madness, but both of those were on my top 10, so I instead chose to talk about Gloom. Now, Gloom is a game that managed to have a lot of theme with very little actually, driving that theme. So, in Gloom, you have a family, and it's a dark theme. You're trying to kill off your family. You try to make them as unhappy as possible, then kill them off, while other people are trying to make your family happy so that to slow you down and get you less points. But you get them points by having the most unhappy dead people. But it has a nice mechanism that's really, really well done, where you have the transparent cards that you're putting on top of your family members to put the negative modifiers on. And as you add cards, you're covering up other modifiers, you're adding new ones, and it's, really well done. Each card has like one line of flavor text that you were expected to elaborate on. You're supposed to be telling stories as you do this. It's an optional thing, but I think it really adds a lot to this game. Is you're describing the incidents that happened to the family members that, cause such unhappiness. Like, you go to a picnic that's ruined because a duck steals the food, and, your loved one is just all disappointed and walks away from you, and it's like, oh, they ruined a perfect evening with my loved one. It's like, oh no. Or it could be you're chased by mice into the woods, and maybe you end up starving to death in those woods. So it really, with just like one sentence of flavor text, it's very easy to build and tell a really nice, elaborate story.
However, before you die, I give you a cake. You found cake in a basket, so now your family member's happy.
Oh no!
Yeah, so yeah, that is an awesome game. You have to role play in the game to make it fun, and it's really cool when you're the opposite player trying to make them happy instead of sad. So I like that a lot.
I'm sold. I want to play this game now.
It's amazing, the right group. And we have it in our community board game library, so you can borrow it anytime you want.
Awesome. Putting it on my list. Okay, my thematic game that I decided to go with, again, some of the other ones that you guys mentioned, could have talked about Mansions of Madness and some of those games. I decided to go, though, with Dune. So if you are a lover of the book or the varying adaptations for TV or movie, or you're just looking forward to the new movie coming out whenever that happens, Dune is the game that allows you to play in the world that Frank Herbert created for his Dune series. You can play up to 6 players, and I would recommend getting as many players as you can to the table for this one, because at lower player counts, it's just not the game that you want it to be. But if you can get the 4 to 6 players to the table, I think for this game it really shines. You're going to take the head of one of the 6 factions that are available. They have asymmetrical powers that are very, very thematic, pulled from the book. If you are the bad guy, Baron Harkonnen from the book, then you get the extra abilities to deceive people throughout the game. Some of the other players will only have 1 or 2 chances. You're going to get a whole lot more chances to do that throughout the game. If you're the Bene Gesserit ladies from the book, you have the ability to win the game without winning the game. You just have to see into the future as to when they're going to win, and if you guess correctly, They lose, you win. There's just a lot of different things pulled from the book that they put into this game that lead the science fiction theme in there, and it's a lot of fun, and I really enjoy it. It can be over relatively quick if you have a lower player count, but it can also go for a good little while if you like a longer game. But this one's kind of feel like a niche theme. If you're into Dune, then I think you're going to love the game. If you play the game and enjoy it, you might like the book, is about what I can say. But I feel like it's a game that they did a really great job of pulling the different characters and factions from it and creating a faction for them in the game that just feels like, oh yes, like I'm remembering parts of the book because of how I'm playing this faction right now. So Dune, I think it's a really fun game.
Yeah, I'd have to say I played Rex, but I played it with 3 players. Rex, if you don't know, is the earlier version of this Dune game that's in the Twilight Imperium universe. I'd say, yeah, it really struggles to make it work at 3 players. I can see the potential with larger player counts, and I really want to play it with a larger player count, and I really also want to try the Dune version.
Same.
I will play Rex anytime I can with you. And Dune.
All right, thematic game. My pick is actually going to be Arkham Horror. I have played this a decent number of times. In Arkham Horror, the board game, you are, of course, take on the role of an investigator, and you have to go about the city and stop the force of the things that should not be named from doing whatever it is they're trying to do. The thematic hinge of the game comes forth in a couple of the different kinds of cards. So at the beginning of the game, there's a scenario sheet that you can read out, and it gives you like what the situation is right now. All the characters that you can pick have like a backstory on the backside of their character cards that give you an idea of who they are. There are specific cards that are set into play in the codex that have flavor text on them that tell you about like the timey-wimey things that are going on because Azathoth is on the prowl. There are these encounter cards that you can interact with during the course of the game that are specific to not only the neighborhood that you are in, but the specific location that you are visiting. So you might be able to buy a piece of equipment or make a test to do something or not do something. And this all comes together relatively well, I think.
Yeah, that's another game that I really want to play. So.
Oh, I've done a rules walkthrough for that game too, if you want to go check that out.
Yeah, that'll be going up before this podcast does, so that's going to be great.
When you mentioned timey-wimey, I thought you were going to segue into the Doctor Who board game.
And one of the great old ones is like time less. So when he starts to invade the city, weird time-related things happen.
All right, so now we're going to go on to the best 2-player game. So with me, most of the time I'm playing games with my wife. So this game is amazing. We've played, actually I should just look it up real quick. So for this game, we have played a lot. We've played this game 54 times. So the game is Battle Line by GMT Games. In the game Battle Line, you're going to have 9 flags out, and you're trying to do formations or triples of 3 cards, and they're going to be sequences or sets, and you're trying to set out the best combination you can to win either 5 flags total or 3 flags in a row. The game plays really quickly. You have a set of 7 cards in your hands, and you're going to basically just play a card on your turn and either draw a regular card or a tactics card. And the cool thing about the tactics cards is they have like game-breaking abilities. But the twist on the tactics cards is you can only play 1 more than your opponent has played of. So if you play that first tactics card and you do something, there's a lot of strategy in being the opposite player and not playing a tactics card. So there's a lot of things you can do. If you get into trouble, though, I've had games where we've played every single tactics card in the tactics deck, which is not that many. And I've had games where only one's hit. So it's really fun. It's really fast. And there's a lot of strategy to this simple game with just 9 pawns and 2 deck of cards.
Yeah, okay, so my 2-player game. Well, originally I had Onitama, but since you mentioned that in strategy games, I figured let's go for Seven Wonders Duel. Seven Wonders Duel Seven Wonders, obviously, that's been taken into a 2-player version. And I think they've improved it significantly by doing that. Now, you lay out the board with cards, and the cards will form a pyramid, where in the first stage, you're going to be taking from the top of this pyramid, and every other layer is going to be hidden. As you buy cards, you may reveal something on the next layer, or you may open up something that you could already see in the third or the final layer. And you're taking turns claiming cards, so you do have to be careful. Make sure you're not opening up a card to the other player that they really want or you really want. So it's sometimes you're taking cards you really want, or you're essentially hate drafting by taking a card that you don't necessarily want to prevent them from getting the card that you really want or you really don't want them to have. And there's a couple different ways to win. You can win by pushing the tug-of-war style war progression chart. If you get all the way to the end, just automatically win. You can win by having all the sciences, or you can win just by points. And more often than not, you win by points because you tend to watch out for the other instant victory conditions and really make sure you're not opening those cards up to them. But it's a really good, solid 2-player strategy game. Seven Wonders Duel.
Yeah, I might have to check that out at some point. I have found that a lot of drafting style games get the hate draft wrong. Like there's little or no opportunity or desire to hate draft. So this game does it a little bit better. I'd be interested to check it out.
Yeah, I like it better than a lot of drafting because the things that you're drafting are there in front of you, so you can see what's available and see what they're taking rather than just trying to remember what was in the hand before.
All right. So for my best 2-player game, I went with Japor, which I was relatively recently introduced to and have now played a handful of times and really enjoy. In this game, you are playing traders and traders, not traitors. Traders, and you and your opponent are going to be trading cards and selling cards to try to end up being the one who has earned the most gold by the end of the round. And it is a best out of 3 game, so you'll play at least 2, possibly 3 rounds of this game, and you're going to be, like I said, swapping your cards and trading them in the market, and then also keeping track of your camel herds, because you can use camel herds to trade a bunch of cards sometimes, and then the person at the end of the round who has the most camels ends up getting some extra points. So it's a lot of fun. It's fast paced. Usually a round is going to be played anywhere from maybe 10-15 minutes, if that, and it's just very well balanced, very easy and quick to learn, and a lot of fun. So that is Japor.
Yeah, I've never played that one either, but it becomes highly recommended.
Yeah, it's just, again, the ease of learning it and teaching it, and then the fact that you can play it so quick. It's one of those that it's very rare, I think, sometimes for us in my household to finish a game and then immediately be like, let's play that one again. But this one definitely hit that list, which makes it an even higher recommendation for me. So
I am going to pick the 2-player game that I have played more games 2-player than any other game. I'm going to pick Magic the Gathering as my 2-player game. Yeah, they're giving me the golf clap, people. So, don't get me wrong, I really enjoy Magic the Gathering as a multiplayer game too. I really enjoy multiplayer politicking, but Magic the Gathering was originally designed as a 2-player duel, and it is a great game in that format. If you get into it, there's certainly more than enough cool combinations and awesome effects and interesting decks that you can dive into. But if you just need to try out the game, there's something called the Arena Starter Deck. That's 2 60-card decks in a single box. It's relatively inexpensive. That's currently available in the market. You can also try it out online with the Magic Arena program that actually has a great built-in tutorial to teach you the basics and doesn't involve any money up front, but it has like mobile game, like you can pay money for like special currency sort of stuff.
do they still have the game night box set still available?
I don't think there's one currently on the market, but I think there's one coming out before the end of the year. Things fall into and out of print periodically. But
Okay.
You're right, the game night kit is a great little box set too, because it's basically 4 or 5 decks in one box, so it can play a whole family, and you can use that, multiplayer or a series of duels.
Right. And then you've even got some multiple decks that you can start practicing mixing decks eventually if you want to.
Yeah, there's a couple sets out there that where the cards inside aren't decks, but they're half decks. They did this with the most recent Unglued box set. There were like 5 half decks in the box. So you build a deck by taking 2 half decks and mixing them together and mix whichever color combinations you wanted.
Nice.
All right, so next up is Best High Player Account Game, and mine is going to be Bonanza. So Bonanza can play up to 7 players. And Bonanza, what you're doing is it is a market-style game where you are trying to collect different types of beans in order and be able to turn them in for the most coins, which is the largest sets you can do. And there's a lot of strategy to this game where you have to flip over a market row that you can trade away. You can trade away cards in your hand. But the cool thing is you can never change the order in your hand. You're always playing right to left. So when you pick up new cards, it goes to the left of your hand, and you're always playing from the right. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to take the beans out that you don't want out of the middle of your hands. You're trying not to get the beans that are in the market row that you don't want. And your opponents are trying to collect these or force you to have to play them. Because if they force you to have to play them, you actually immediately have to lose one of the sets that you're building. And you have to immediately turn them in. So whatever value they were at that point, you get. So if you were trying to get the max coins, which is 4 out of them, you may only get 3 or 2 because someone strategically forced you into getting rid of that set. So there's a lot to it, and they can't do that all the time because they still have to rely on you to be able to trade with them. So it's a really cool, fun, interactive game. I will warn that there is multiple versions of this game, and the rules have been changed for the different versions. So this is one of the games where you could have a person with a copy of it and have different rules to it. Like I know a version actually allows you to buy an extra bean field with coins. My version does not. So there is a lot of little differences to it. So if you have a friend with a copy and you're playing it and you have a copy, you might find that the rules are slightly different, but the idea is the same. And that is Bonanza.
Yeah, I've played this once or twice, and I love it how the game gives you a lot of cards, and that forces you to trade as well.
Yeah, so there's a lot to it. It's just amazing. It's amazing for a simple card game.
So mine plays up to 6 players, and it's Downforce. Now, Downforce is a car racing game, but it's with an interesting twist. You start the game with a hand of cards, and each card may have 1 to 6 cars on them, and you will have to bid on which cars you want based on the cards you start with. The interesting thing about that is you have less than 6 players, you could actually bid and somebody could have multiple cars, which you would think, okay, well, that would almost guarantee them win, but your car winning is not necessarily the most important thing in this game because you're going to be betting as the game progresses on which car is going to win, and you may intentionally actually let your car fall behind so that the one you bet on wins. So there's also an interesting element of this card is you have these cards that can have all 6 cars on them, and if you play that card, you do have to move all 6 cars. So you're moving your cars as well as your opponent's car. And so there's a lot of, a little bit of bluffing in this game. There's certain parts on the track that you can kind of block people at. So you're trying to predict how people will play and trying to trick people into betting for the wrong car. That's Downforce.
So my best high player count game is one that I kind of quickly mentioned earlier when we were talking about party games, and that is Codenames. I enjoy this game. Anytime I get a chance to play it with my friends, you can play up to, it says 8 players. Honestly, you're going to have 2 spy masters. Other than that, you can have as many people as you want per team and just go with it and have a good time. I think the more people you add in, the more chaos there is, and that makes it more fun. But if you've not played Codenames, it is a group game. You have 2 groups, 2 teams, and each team has a spy master, and it is their job to see what clues their team is trying to guess, and then they try to come up with single word clues to get them to guess as many of those words as possible without choosing the other team's words or choosing the assassin, which would cause them to lose the game immediately. It's been around for a while now. It's got tons of different versions now at this point. There's picture ones. There's all sorts of different versions. I've only ever played the original Codenames, and I still really enjoy it. So if you're looking to get a lot of people to the table to play a game together, like I said, box says up to 8. I think you can play with about as many people as you want and have a good time. So Codenames.
So Peter, if you like Codenames, I would suggest trying out Codenames Duet.
I have heard that it's really good.
Most of the other Codenames are just basically rethemes, just not much difference. But Codenames Duet makes it a cooperative game, which you wouldn't think would work for this, but it actually does. It's basically the way it works is you will have a double-sided objective card, and you have separate objectives, separate assassins, so they will never overlap. But even if if it's not your turn and the other guy's guessing, if they can't guess their own assassin, there's a lot of little things like that. It's like you're cooperating and trying to. I'm not explaining this well. Sorry.
No, but I mean, again, I like a good 2-player game. And so if it's Codenames and it can be played 2-player, I'm all for trying it.
Yeah, that's a decent one. My pick for high player count game is Cartographers. Cartographers is a flip and write style game. So you basically have a score pad, which is also a map in front of you, and a card is flipped that gives you some terrain symbols and a shape, and you can choose, if there's multiple terrain symbols, you get to choose which terrain symbol you want to put down. And if there's a shape, you can flip or rotate it however you like to squeeze it in your map, and you're trying to get certain patterns based on the objective cards that are scoring that round. There's 4 objective cards, but each of them only score twice over the course of the game. And the only other wrinkle to the game is that there are these monster cards that get shuffled into the deck of cards that gets flipped out, which force you to pass your pad to the person on your left or right, and they get to draw in monster tiles, which, cause negative points per round until you find terrain to enclose them and stop that. This game goes up some obscene number. I mean, if you had a large hall and you could actually run an event of that kind of size with like a overhead projector or similar equipment, you could run this for like 10, 20, 100 people with like one caller. But, it also works at 2 or 4, 8, or whatever you need.
One of these days, challenge accepted. We should try to get 100 players. I love it.
All right. Our next category is going to be Best Co-op Game. And undoubtedly, the best co-op game ever created on the face of the planet is Mansions of Madness. With this app-based Cthulhu game, you play with other investigators, and you're trying to make it out of different scenarios. And it's really cool because all the work is offloaded to the app. The app also gives this thematic feel on there with the music playing, and it actually takes care of everything. So you're only focusing on winning your scenario. You're only focusing on going through and trying to deal with whatever the heck's happening. And each scenario is completely different. There's just so much that offloading this stuff onto the app will allow you to do. Like one, you're on a moving train. The other one, you're in a mansion. One, you're in a jungle. One, you're on a boat. So there is a lot of different things, and it actually emulates movement. So really cool. My favorite co-op game, Mansions of Madness.
I was wondering why you didn't mention this in thematic.
So
I was wondering when he was going to mention this.
So for thematic reasons, Dead of Winter and Mansions of Madness are pretty close. But since Mansions of Madness is by far my favorite co-op game, that's why it got ordered that way.
So I'm kind of cheating on my own personal rule on this one. So in 2 ways. So Gloomhaven was on my top 10 list, so I didn't want to include that. So I actually chose Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion, which technically I have not played. It is Gloomhaven with some nice little tweaks that really seem interesting. Instead of having to use the modularized tiles to make the map, you just have a book that you open up to the page, and it's in a secondary book for larger maps, and you don't have to. It avoids all that setup, and it's still Gloomhaven.
All right. So for my best co-op game, I went with The Crew: The Quest for Planet 9. So again, this one just kind of surprised me by giving me a cooperative trick-taking game. I've played a lot of other types of cooperative games, but never one that was trick-taking, and found it to be incredibly interesting. The lack of ability to communicate with your teammates, except through like a very specific mechanic, to try to, with ever increasingly difficult quests as you play this game, are trying to complete tricks in very specific orders. And if you take a trick out of order, then all of a sudden you have failed your mission, your spaceship has exploded, or whatever you want to come up with, and you got to try to do the mission again. There's 50 missions included in the base game, and like I said, they get increasingly more and more difficult. And I just had never played a trick-taking game that was going to be cooperative before, and so having to try to figure out how to do that was a lot of fun. And then getting to play some of those missions has been interesting. I've so far have only been able to play it in the 2-player version, which is not the ideal version of the game. but that's because I got this game during the original lockdown of COVID. So I have not had a chance yet to get together with some other friends and play, but this is one I'm very much looking forward to playing with some friends as soon as I can get more people to the table.
Yep, you can sign me up for that.
Signed up you are.
All right, we of course did a whole episode of co-op games, and all the games mentioned in that episode are amazing, so you should go listen to it. But my pick for this episode is going to be Tiny Epic Zombies. Tiny Epic Zombies small box game, but it does a really good job of forcing the players both work for objectives and put out fires, which are the two main things that you're doing in most co-op games. Put out fires, figuratively speaking, not literally speaking. What do you call it? The game also has a great game variability to it. Each game you set up 3 objectives, but there's 9 in the box. So the combination of objectives and which ones are play can change gameplay. Players get a unique player power. The zombie horde gets a unique power. The weapons and equipment that you can find during the game give you special abilities when attacking and defending. For the most part, can vary quite. So it is my pick for co-op games.
Zombies.
Also, zombies. Who doesn't like killing zombies? Yeah.
Exactly. So in the next category here is going to be favorite pick. Mine really wants to be Blood Rage. Because Eric Lang, it's an amazing game, greatest designer on the face of the planet. It's not in print. Why is this game not in print? What is
You're kidding me. It's not in print?
Yeah, it's not in print. What is wrong with the world? It's an amazing game of just fast-paced card drafting fighting game. But I have to skip it because it's not in print. Simon, what the heck? So my game is going to be Wingspan, which we've already talked about. It is a great game. I just love the bird collecting in it. I like the powers that you get from firing them off. It's just a really satisfying, fun game. It's very easy to teach, but there's a lot of depth to it. And they're coming out with lots of support. They already have one expansion and another one's on its way. So my favorite pick is Wingspan.
Yeah, surprised by Blood Rage being not really readily available. You still can find it, but
you can pay $90 and get it. And going up daily. Don't know why.
Yeah.
Still probably worth it at $90, but maybe wait until it goes back in print.
Oh, mine is one that recently fell off my top 10, so I feel safe talking about it. It's Cosmic Encounters. Now, Cosmic Encounters is a game with a huge number of player powers that you can possibly end up with. It does play with a high player count. It's generally 3 to 5, but with expansions, I think you can add 6 or even 7, I believe, with the expansions. The base game alone, though, comes with 50 different aliens, and the combinations change the game radically, so you're never going to have the same game twice with this. The downside, yeah, sometimes you may have a game that falls a little bit flat, but more often than not, you have these phenomenal games where player powers just play off each other so well, and you're really getting excited. You're maybe kind of noticing one guy that's really got a cool power, but then everybody's kind of ganging up on him and he's still doing well. It's a really fun game. The base concept is pretty simple. You are sending ships to planets, trying to, knock out the other player and take over the colony. Once you get a certain number of colonies, you've won. Not much to that, but the player powers are really all important for this game. It's really a phenomenal game. Glory to Rome is kind of got the same kind of overpowered player power card effects. So if you think of that and you really like that, you're probably also going to like Cosmic Encounters.
All right, and for me, favorite game, super tough to do because there's a lot of games out there that I really love and have been enjoying as I've been getting more and more into this hobby. But I went with one that is a favorite of mine to play, to teach, to introduce my friends to. I've played it online. I've played it at the table, and every time I do, I enjoy it, even when I lose, which is most of the time. But that's Lords of Waterdeep. It's just a really fun worker placement game put out by Wizards of the Coast. If anybody listening to this show has heard me talk, I love Dungeons and Dragons, so getting to throw that theme on top of this board game is a lot of fun, but you're, going around and you're placing your workers and you're getting your resources and turning them in to complete your quests. It's a very, I want to say it's kind of a very basic game, but if you get some of the expansions as well, Scoundrels of Skullport, it adds another depth and dimension to the game where there's the possibility to lose points depending on how much risk you're willing to take throughout the game to complete some of your missions. And I think Lords of Waterdeep is a very well built game that stands stands the test of time and is enjoyable. So, Lords of Waterdeep.
My personal favorite pick is 51st State Master Set. This is a card-based engine building game that uses multi-use cards. It's probably my favorite one of the style of game that's in my collection and is still available. So in this game, you take on the role of a remnant society in post-apocalyptic America, and you're gathering resources and raiding locations, burning them to the ground, and making deals with all these other remnant factions represented by these cards. And you rack in tons of resources over the course of this game and try to find ways to turn them into points. And the game's actually relatively quick. It usually ends in 4 or 5 rounds, and yet you get that full like engine building experience. By the end of the game, you have like a bunch of cards in front of you. They do a lot of stuff for you. You feel good about what you built.
Yes, 51st State. I am super sad I missed the playthrough you guys did. I really, really wanted to play that game.
You should have been
won.
there. You should have been.
I would
No,
have won.
no, Dan, no, he had that one hands down.
I would have won.
Thought I had that game.
So our last category is going to be our nonsensical category. So games that we think are the best that are nonsensical. And mine is a game I love that it makes no sense whatsoever. I love playing it at work when we had lunch, I didn't work from home, and we played at lunch times. I love playing it with my daughters and big groups. This is also a huge group game. And that is the Great Dalmuti. The Great Dalmuti makes no sense. It really doesn't. All you're doing is you have the Dalmuti, the Lesser Dalmuti, some merchants, and some peons. And the game is completely about being unfair. The Great Dalmuti is a trick-taking game. They get all the advantages. The Great Dalmuti gets to give their 2 worst cards to the peon, and the peon gives them the 2 best cards. Not only that, the Great Dalmuti goes first at the beginning of the game and can control the tricks throughout the game. So it's really hard for the Great Dalmuti to ever leave that seat. And the fun thing about the game is, against all odds, moving up and getting that person out of the seat. Going from the peon to the Greater Dalmuti. It's just a fun, interactive, great game that's just a lot of fun, really fast. Each round takes about 10 minutes, so you can just keep playing it over and over again and just see how you turn out. Great game, the Great Dalmuti. And they're also having a reprint on it, which is D&D themed.
So I have one that's nonsensical in the fact that I like it and it's a really good game, even though everything about it are things that I hate. It's real time, got the little sand timers. Okay, well that normally would be enough. That that I would not touch this game. But the game is Time and Space, and Time and Space is a real-time trading game where you're upgrading your ships, getting resources, getting to other colonies, bartering with the other players at their colony to try to trade goods and get the goods back to your homeworld and, keep upgrading your ship and get points that way. And it's really fun and exciting. The timed element is in that most of your actions require timing. So when you take an action, you turn over a sand timer, and that action takes that long. And when you take a second action, you turn over your second sand timer, and basically you have to kind of watch your sand timers to know when you can take your next action, which at the very beginning of the game is slower paced. You don't have as much to do. You're kind of figuring out what your long-term strategy. You do have a little bit more time to think, but as the game progresses, you're trying to turn those sand timers as fast as you can and doing many actions as fast as you can, and it really kind of paces up. It gives you a chance to learn what you're doing, get a strategy, and then go all out.
It sounds like an interesting game,
No,
and
it
I
sounds
don't feel like I'm a little bit more lenient and open to ideas than some of the people on this show.
It has one of the most hideous covers I've seen, which is probably why people don't really talk about it. It didn't get much attention.
Oh man, it just keeps getting better.
It's so good, guys.
Yeah.
The game is weird.
Sand
The
timers.
art is bad, but it's a great game.
Yeah, sand timers. I tell you, sand timers. Mm-hmm.
So I feel like each of us had like our own understanding of this category, and mine honestly was I was reading through the list of the games that I had chosen, and my wife said, "What? This game hadn't made your list yet? This game should be on your list because I love this game." And I said, "Okay, in the best nonsense game, I will choose your game." And that is Unstable Unicorns. So you're going to build...
That's pretty nonsensical, yeah.
Right? You're going to build a unicorn army, betray your friends. Unicorns are your friends now. Honestly, I've played this game more than a handful of times at this point. I enjoy it. I've got friends who like the art from the game, and it's fun listening to the different strange magical unicorns that they designed for the game and the different abilities that they have. You're just building up an army of unicorns, like it says, and some have different abilities that allow you to trump other unicorns, destroy them, blow them up, steal them, and use them against the player who originally played them. And the first player to have 9 in their stable wins. It can be over in like 20 minutes. Sometimes it goes a little longer, up into like 30-40 minute range, and they've got a couple different expansions to it. So if you like unicorns and you like dragons, then you can have dragon unicorns in your game. So I enjoy it. I think it's fun. It's not the most strategic game or the hardest game, but I am not snobby with my games. As long as I'm having a good time, then I'm going to enjoy it, and this can be a good time. So Unstable Unicorns.
Hold on, let me take my bubble pipe out. Dear sir.
All right, so my pick for nonsense game is the game that's 100% stupid that I will still play, and this is called Zombie Dice. Zombie Dice is completely amazing, but it's just like a push your luck dice roller. You roll 3 dice, set aside any shotguns. If you shotgun symbols, if you accumulate 3 shotgun symbols, you crap out and you score nothing. There's a foot symbol that represents a human that's getting away from you. You are the zombie in this game. That's a forced reroll. You got to reroll that die. And then there are brain icons. So you want to roll as many brains as possible. You set the brains aside as well and pull more dice out of the cup. The dice have actually different colors, so you got different chances of rolling. You've got a higher chance of roll a shotgun on a red die, for example. But like the first person to hit 13 brains as a total score triggers the end game, and then each other player gets one final turn to try to match or beat that score, and that's it.
Got to get them brains.
All right, so that is the end of our different categories and our favorite picks for each one. But I believe now that Dan has an announcement.
Right. So this episode was all about our holiday picks. So I'm assuming that you guys like games.
One would hope
so.
I do.
I am going to play Santa Claus for you guys. I have some store credit at Miniature Market, and it is my challenge to all of you guys to pick out a game from their catalog, and you will have to defend your choice when we discuss our wish list episode, right? And then this game may mysteriously show up at your house. Just saying.
Oh, I like this. I like this a lot.
This sounds awesome.
All right, I like this a lot. All right, cool. That is awesome. I already have my list of games, so it won't change.
I haven't finalized my wish list yet.
Thank you for listening. If you have any feedback for us, feel free to visit us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or Board Game Geek Guild 2989, or our website at tabletopgamingguild.com. And don't forget to like, follow, and or subscribe. Tabletop Gaming Guild is a product of Tabletop Gaming Guild, LLC. All rights reserved.